But we begin with breaking news tonight. Judge Tanya Chutkan, who's presiding over Donald Trump's federal election interference case, has rejected Trump's request for her to recuse herself in the case. Judge Chutkan's thorough rebuke comes as Trump claimed that her past statements at the sentencing for two January 6 defendants implied that he should be prosecuted and imprisoned. It's Trump's second defeat by a judge in just 2 days. Yesterday's ruling by a New York judge and Attorney General Letitia James' civil lawsuit against Trump undercut one of his most consequential myths, the lie that Trump was, in real life, the character that he played on TV for 14 seasons on The Apprentice. A billionaire, a successful real estate developer, a wise businessman. But the truth was, and still is, that the twice impeached, 4 times indicted, civilly liable for sexual abuse former president has been none of those things. In his scathing 35-page ruling, Judge Arthur N. Gordon found that Trump committed repeated acts of fraud for years as he massively overvalued his assets and net worth by billions of dollars in his financial statements. The judge said that Trump's legal arguments defending those statements were based in a, quote, fantasy world, and noted the difference between how independent professional appraisers valued Trump's properties compared to what Trump claimed they were worth. His Westchester County Seven Springs estate appraised at $30 million. Trump's value? Between $261 and $291 million. 40 Wall Street in Manhattan was appraised at $540 million. Trump's value? $735 million. And, of course, there's Mar-a-Lago, which was appraised at between $18 and $27 million. But according to Trump's financial statements, it was supposedly worth anywhere between $426 and $612 million, an overvaluation of at least 2,300%. And then there's Trump's penchant for overstating the size of things. The judge pointed to Trump having wildly exaggerated the size of his New York apartment in his flagship property, Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue, to pump up its value, repeatedly claiming it was over 30,000 square feet when it was actually a third of that size, which prompted the judge to write, a discrepancy of this order of magnitude by a real estate developer sizing up his own living space of decades can only be considered fraud. And so, the trial in the civil lawsuit will begin on Monday, more than 4 years after Letitia James first opened her civil investigation. It's an investigation that she said only began because of the 2019 congressional testimony from Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, who put a spotlight on Trump's misconduct.
To your knowledge, did the president or his company ever inflate assets or revenues?
Yes.
To your knowledge, did the president ever provide inflated assets to an insurance company?
Yes.
Do you know, to your knowledge, was the president interested in reducing his local real estate bills, tax bills?
Yes.
And how did he do that?
What you do is you deflate the value of the asset, and then you put in a request to the tax department for a deduction.
And was that done with the president's knowledge or direction?
Everything was done with the knowledge and at the direction of Mr. Trump.
Joining me now is Michael Cohen, Trump's former personal lawyer. He is the host of the Mea Culpa and Political Beatdown podcast and is the author of Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the Department of Justice Against His Critics. An apt title. Michael, good to see you.
Good to see you, Joy.
Let's just talk about Mar-a-Lago for just a moment. So Mar-a-Lago, he claims, is worth, and it's kind of funny, $1.5 billion. Here's the deposition from Donald Trump. Do you have the sense of the price of Mar-a-Lago? The value? Yes. I think I do. I think I do. And how much do you think it's worth? $1.5 billion. And what's your basis for that? Just broker talk, never been for sale. 2 people owned it. I would say that based on what we'll have people come in, experts and like this to show a price of 1.5. I believe the price will be 1.5 billion. So he just makes up the value of things out of what? His own mind, how he's feeling that day?
Absolutely. There's no basis for a $1.5 billion valuation of Mar-a-Lago. Let me, though, be clear. When Judge when Judge Engoron, in this specific case, stated that the value of Mar-a-Lago is between $14 to $26 million, he didn't mean the sale price. He was talking about the assessed value. And Trump actually tried to have that reduced even further, because by reducing it even further, based upon some algorithmic number that's used by the state, would reduce the tax basis.
Right.
So it's not the value of the property. I'd pay $20 million for Mar-a-Lago in a heartbeat. So would anybody in Palm Beach. He's talking about the assessed value. And again, there's some algorithmic number. I just wanted to be clear about that. But under no circumstance is it worth anywhere near $1.5 billion.
Right. And some of the things that he's doing, I mean, in the case of Mar-a-Lago, it is zoned to be a club. It is not a private residence anymore because he had to give it up in bankruptcy and make it turn a profit. So he's assessing it as if he could sell it as parceled off lots in Palm Beach and then inflating that by 3,000%.
Right. Well, first of all, you can't just take a property which is zoned as a social club and automatically turn it into a residential property. Then on top of that, you can't parcel it off simply because that's what you want to do. There's all forms of application, and he would not be entitled to it. First of all, let's assume that he sold the property tomorrow. He doesn't get the money. He doesn't get to keep all that money. There are people that paid $350,000 as a bond to be a member of that club. They're entitled to their bond money back.
That's right.
Now, they may not be entitled to interest. I'm not sure exactly how the paperwork goes. Actually, I'm pretty sure, knowing Donald, that there's no interest that's going to be paid on it. But for certain, they're entitled to their bond money back. And he's got several hundred members. So now you have to take that amount of money, reduce it, and if in fact that he's forced to sell it, there's also the delta between his acquisition, which is called the basis, and how much he sold it for. He's going to have to pay federal tax on that money too.
And he did this with property after property. We're just going to put them up on. There's Seven Springs, 40 Wall Street, Mar-a-Lago, Trump National Golf Club, LA, and the Trump Park Avenue. He doesn't own as many things as people think, by the way. So in the case of Seven Springs, he plussed it up from 30 million to almost 291 million. In the case of 40 Wall Street, he went from 540 to 735. In the case of Mar-a-Lago, we just talked about it. Trump National Golf Club, 16.5 is the real value. He says 73. Trump National Golf Club LA, 16 to 56. Then we could just go on. Trump Park Avenue, 750,000. These are rent controlled. These are rent-controlled apartments.
Well,
so essentially
not all of them.
Right.
Not all of them.
But they're 750,000 per, 62,500 per unit. But he inflated it by 700%. So he's making up numbers, and he says based on the value of his name and his brand. And the judge was excoriating. He came out and dropped an anvil on him. So what happens now? Because that part of the case is over. Tish James won that. Now he's got to litigate these other parts of it. At this point, is it just about how much he's going to pay?
Yeah, that's all that it's about. So all trials in New York are bifurcated. There's two parts to it. The first part is the liability. That's been decided by Judge Engoron yesterday in this decision. Now you go to the second part, which is based on damages. How much is our unsinkable Attorney General, Tish James, going to take from Donald Trump based upon the overvaluation and the actions that he did with the personal financial statement? How much is she going to hit him up for that? And that doesn't even include interest and penalty that gets associated to it. Now, there's a lot of mistakes that are made by pundits and journalists where they turn around and they claim that it's a $250 million lawsuit. No, it's not. It is a baseline of $250 million. That means she's not going less than $250 million.
That's the minimum.
That's the bottom.
Yeah.
How much? Well, that we'll see at trial, which, as you know, I've already been subpoenaed by Tish James in order to testify. And I have to be very honest with you. After a lot of the actions that we're seeing, the attacks on Judge Chutkan, the attacks on Tish James herself, the attacks on DA Alvin Bragg, the attacks on everyone.
Fani Willis, everyone.
On Fani Willis.
Jack Smith.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. I think it's incumbent now upon government, because I listen, again, to a lot of pundits on the various different stations talking about how they have to do something to curb Donald Trump's language. What are we going to wait until something, God forbid, happens, and then everyone's going to say thoughts and prayers to the family? No. He should not be permitted to do what he's doing. He's threatening judges. He's threatening prosecutors. He's threatening witnesses. This is all obstruction of justice and witness tampering. And if they don't do something about it, I have a strong suspicion a lot of people may not end up showing up testifying. Listen, I'm considering it myself, despite the fact I'm under subpoena. I don't have to put my life on the line simply because Donald Trump cannot control himself and the courts are not controlling him.